Welcome to Fostering Independence, Tools and Strategies for Paraeducators. My name is Kim Snowball, and I will be your consultant today and facilitator for this session. You will have 3 passcodes that you will need to copy down in your participant packet on page 1. And after you complete the session, step 3 will contain a link to apply for your certificate. Remember to enter your email as carefully as possible and double check it, as if there are typos, your certificate will not make it to you and you will need to reapply. So let's begin. Just to clarify, sometimes I refer to the training guide. You'll see this on the left-hand side of the screen. Other times I will refer to the participant packet. This is the 9-page handout that you will use to capture your learning during this session. Don't fear, 9 pages is a lot, but many of the pages are graphics that you will use to guide you through the activities. Grab a pencil and your participant packet. During this introductory activity, we want you to capture your thoughts as you take a few minutes to visualize this particular scene. So close your eyes. Now, you are notified when you arrive at work that you are getting someone to support you all day long. They will help you with your task, motivate you, prompt you when you get stuck, and help you when you cannot do things easily. You don't get to choose who they are. They will tell you how you should be supported. Now, when you think about that scene, how does that make you feel? Did you feel frustrated, resentful, angry? Maybe it caused a little bit of anxiety or a lot of anxiety. Now think about your first meeting with students you work with on a regular basis, or those you are assigned to for a short period, maybe due to another fellow paraeducator's absence. When you meet students for the first time, how will you introduce yourself? You want to make sure we reduce all the negative feelings and build a supportive relationship, but not too supportive. As remember, this session is about fostering independence, and we do not want to interfere with that type of independence. This slide, we're going to talk about a little bit of the research that has been done between the interactions of students with their peers, as well as their general education teacher, paraeducators, and special education teachers. And so the research found that regardless of the educational setting, children who are supported by a paraprofessional spend the majority of their time interacting with that paraprofessional assigned to them, leaving less time for interaction with peers. And so we know that when we observe through this study, 420 minutes of observation, the students participated in only 84 interactions. Of those 84 interactions, 52 of the interactions were with adults, 16 were with peers without disabilities, and 16 were interactions with one particular student. We want to increase the interactions that our students, all students, have with each other. So if you want to read more about this, it's a lengthy article. I did include it on the training guide, so you can capture it there and dive into it a little more. The purposes of talking about this is we have research that shows close proximity with an adult interferes with peer interactions. And so we refer to this as creating that bubble. Students with disabilities who receive too much paraprofessional support are less likely to be independent, support the learning of their classmates, and socialize with non-disabled peers. Again, I'm just giving you some of the research so that we understand why it's important for us to develop additional tools so that we can foster that independence. For every student, every day, our goal as educators should be to help them become independent or as independent as possible. We will refer to this goal a little later, So remember that oversupport has negative implications for students, including social alienation and overdependence. We want our students to be independent or as independent as possible. Sometimes we simply just need to step back and pause and listen to our students. So let's read a little bit about Jamie and the advice she wants to give us as we work with students. Jamie says, "We are willing and ready to connect with other kids, and adults must quietly step into the background, camouflaging their help as a tiger who may hide in full view. It's the needed disguise of the adults who smooths the way for friendships, then stands back in the shadows, observing the complicated dance of steps taking you to the feeling of confidence." Bravo, Jamie. The goal today, like we said earlier, is to foster independence. So we're going to be diving into ways for instructional assistants and paraprofessionals to use the steps of systems of least prompts, as well as 20 or more ways to provide silent and invisible support while building resiliency, confidence, and independence. So welcome. In your participant packet on page 1, you will find this graphic, as it is the one that will help visually make sense of the systems of least prompts, in my opinion. You will also find the link on this graphic on the training guide in step 3. It is part of a file of resources you will find in Resources to Foster Independence. The goal here is that when we are going through a lesson and we're giving an attention cue and we're waiting for the students to respond, and then we deliver the task directions, we want to have a system in place so that we can provide controlling prompts from a hierarchy, the least intrusive first, all the way to the most intrusive. The key is to start at the bottom rung, the least intrusive, and move up only as far as necessary and return back down as quickly as possible. The key is to start at the bottom rung. That is the key, and only move up when you need to. Look at some of the examples of each type of prompt. We will start at the first rung of the ladder and move up. And when you do so, think about how you get a feel for that natural progression as you move up the ladder. So we'll start here. Invisible / material. On that rung, you're really just observing. If that's not working, then natural cues in the classroom may be the next level of prompting that is needed. So the students observe peers and partners as they begin instruction. Wait time needs to be provided. And after that wait time has been provided, then you may want to think about a gesture, a hand signal to act out opening a book if students are pulling out a resource or a folder. Then we will go into indirect verbal. That is really paraphrasing the instruction or restating the directions near the student, but not too directly to the student, but more general. If that doesn't work, then you could go to modeling how to do the task. Visual prompting would be the next one, where you show maybe pictures, photographs of an object that will help provide information about what is expected. If that still doesn't work, then we've got verbal prompting. That's when you're directly telling the student what to do, almost like a one-on-one little mini session. If that still doesn't work, then we move to partial physical, gently guiding, the students to complete the task. And really, it's only a portion of the task or activity. And then there is the full physical, where you're gently guiding them to help the student complete the entire step of the activity. So that in itself is the prompting hierarchy. You start at the least intrusive and you only move up, keeping in mind as you go up the rung of ladder, you want to move down as quickly as possible. Now we're ready for password number 1. The first password, least intrusive prompt. First password, least intrusive prompt. Write that down in your packet. I provided this graphic on the last page of your handout as it gives you examples of the type of visual supports, and sometimes that is the most frequently asked question. So the type of visual prompts that you can use with your students, check it out at the last page of your participant handout or packet. Now, as we said before, let's review. Before stepping on your ladder, you want to observe the student. You want to have enough time for students to productively struggle without creating struggle. Sometimes we just need to pause because we need to be thinking about how much processing time do they need to follow through on the directions or instructions. Remember, you can always make sure that the materials are arranged for the students, like putting tabs or color coding or creating a checklist. Think through, is there a student self-monitoring system already in place? Before you even interject, all of these need to be in place. And then remember, keep in mind that we want to increase interactions with peers, so support students in every aspect of the classroom with peer support. Now we're going to take a little bit of time here, and we're going to click on the training guide in a few minutes on step 2. There's a link provided to watch a video with Meeting Owen. And this video is captures an interaction between a paraeducator and a student. Now, you're going to also need to make sure you have your handout as you're going to capture what's going on and what do you notice and what do you wonder on the handout toward the bottom of the page, and you see the handout on the screen. Observe the student and the support services they're receiving, as well as the paraeducator's location with respect to the student. We call that proximity. Again, capture what do you notice and what do you wonder. But before you begin, I want to also make sure that there is the third column on that handout, the type of supports provided. You want to make sure you use the handout to take specific notes. What type of supports are given? Use the prompting ladder. Each one of the levels are numbered. You can simply write the number associated with the level on your handout, and then pause the video, watch the interactions between the students and the paraeducators. And when we return, we will look at ways to fade support. Well, welcome back. As you reflect on the interactions between paraeducators and the students, think about where would you go from here on the ladder. This is that ways to fade supports. Could you think about a lower level being used instead of the current prompt that was used? The goal here is to pause and think about what could have been done to foster independence instead of rushing to the highest rung of the ladder to save time. So you may pause the video and think through ways to foster independence by fading support. Now that you've reflected on the interactions between Owen and the paraeducator, I want you to think of the students that you work with. Think of only one skill that the student is struggling with. Where do you start on that prompting ladder? What type of prompts and supports do you provide? Do you enter it at the lowest level? And if not, think about how you can change your practice so that you are truly providing the least intrusive supports and moving up that prompting ladder. I am, as well as everyone that is working with you, we're all aware that with the best intentions, we are providing support. We just need to be thinking about, are the supports creating independence? And if not, we're going to be more purposeful in our time and how we provide supports. Sometimes we find ourselves in one of these situations. Remember the earlier slide where we talked about paraprofessionals over support can hinder inclusion in the whole class instruction and can lead to fewer interactions between themselves and their teachers and classmates. This happens not only in schools, but we also see it with parenting, and we just need to be thinking about what is the ultimate goal for fostering independence. To further support your work, check out the link on step 2 of the training, Resources to Foster Independence. Here you will be taken to a folder where you can print off additional handouts to support fostering independence. I highly recommend creating a binder with all of your handouts as well as schedules. And if you are interested in that, please contact me, as we do have an additional 1-hour session that is all about your resources in one place and creating that very binder. As we move to the next section of this training, you will be reading about 20 ways to provide invisible support or silent support found in your participant packet beginning on page 4. We're going to give you a little bit of choice here. There's 2 ways you can actually handle this section. One, you can read each one of the sections and then jot down notes about how you would do this in your classroom and then repeat it for each section. You can do this independently, or we're going to take some time and go through and just read them with you so that we can brainstorm a few ideas and let you have some time to think about each one of the 20 ways to provide invisible or silent support. So, number 1, in section 1, we can either highlight the directions. So that's like on a complex worksheet, you will just take a highlighter and highlight the important pieces, the key information or the key directions. You can also do a jot it down. So when there's verbal directions, write those on a Post-it note and give it to the student. So for example, if they need to turn to a certain page, you can jot it down, and that way you're providing silent support. And again, in this section, there's create a checklist so that you're not interacting or you're not being in the conversation with the students or the group, but you would just create the checklist and then they will go through and follow it. And if they have any questions, they can reach out. So that's section 1. So take some time to think about how could you use these strategies with the students that you work with. Now, in section 2, it's more about utilizing peer support so that you can still provide invisible or silent support. So, number 4, enlist a peer. Ask the peer to be that person that can help the student with maybe something as simple as zipping up the coat or helping with the tray at lunchtime. So, just enlist a peer. Number 5, use 3 before me. This is a very, very popular type of strategy to implement class policies where all the students seek help. 3 peers before asking the adult in the room. That also gives some students independence as far as seeking those around them. Now, number 6 is engage and partner. So encourage and not require. That's the important piece. Not require that every student have a designated walking buddy to get to the next class. That could be an example. Or going to go turn in assignments. Designate a turn and have that partner do some turn and talks with another person. So again, all you're doing is facilitating the environment. As the students in this section, really it's about peer support. Again, take some time to jot down some examples with how you could use these in your classroom. In section 3, I find that this is so simple, but it's so powerful. Number 7, use a sticky note or a bookmark. So instead of helping the student turn the pages, all you're going to be doing is facilitating some independence where they're looking for that particular bookmark and they're going to be able to turn to that page. Number 8, transition wordlessly. So using a timer or stopwatch to let the student know it's time to transition to the next activity. Very simple, and there are plenty of different types of stopwatches that will not create anxiety, but will just support them. Number 9, provide a pointer. So give students an object to use to point to each to the work while they read independently or quarterly. There are so many cool little pointers that you can attach to the ends of fingertips, or just some little pointers that look like little wands or popsicle sticks, but it does give them some independence so that they can track their own reading or their own following on directions. And it's just fun and helps with engagement. So take some time to jot down examples, again, that you will use in your classroom. And then we'll go on to 10 through 20. In section 4, bookmark it. Number 10 is bookmark it. So you can actually use technology, and this section is all about technology, to set up some laptops and some support for students to have the bookmarks already made so that they can easily and quickly and efficiently get to the site that they're going to be working on. Number 11, tech support. Use a student's phone to offer support. So there's the Remind Me app, and there are other different ways that we can use technology to support students as they jot down information instead of a notebook, but in a text or notes on their phones. And number 12, as simply stated, is use technology, but that's really providing feedback and support without peers knowing. So you can have that type of system on their device that you can send them some feedback. You can also use this definitely when you're doing visual or virtual support. Take a few minutes, jot down your ideas and how you could utilize these tech supports in your classroom. Now, section 5 is really about giving them a little more room. So it's where you're positioned in the room. So number 13 is called the provide a stop-by support. So you're going to really check on 6 other students before you come back and check on that assigned student so that you can continually be moving away and further away from the student, and they can call you back if needed. And number 14 is float. Rather than sitting next to the student, stand or move about the room so that you are supporting others, but you're in the room and you're fostering independence. Jot down a few ideas. And number 6 has the most ideas or tips. Number 15 is provide a model before a task is assigned. You want to make sure you model a similar problem with the work shown and the correct answer shown. Those are two important pieces. So the work that is shown and the correct answer shown at the top of the paper so they can go back and use that. Number 16 is create material in advance. So you're going to be creating the vocabulary cards or an image, or you're going to be pre-cutting the material so that you're not sitting there next to them, but you're just offering them the materials as they need. Number 17, prep for a discussion. So these sentence starters are a great way for students to be modeling how to um, engage in a conversation, how to begin that conversation, and then sample questions, also how to ask questions when they're in a discussion. So having them ready for the students and not whispering it in their ear or modeling it verbally. Remember, providing invisible or silent support. Number 18, reduce the work. But before you reduce any work, you need to make sure you're checking with the teacher first. This is the one that's got a big asterisk by it, in your mind, that expect the independent work to be individualized based on the students rather than the group, but make sure you're checking with the teacher. Now, number 19 is simplify. That just means that paraphrasing if the language is complex, complicated, or provided too quickly. And that could be done written form, because remember, you're supposed to be silent as possible. But we want to make sure that we reduce those barriers by simplifying or paraphrasing. And number 20 is guide them. Create a graphic organizer ahead of time or guided notes and a template that's easy for students to use. Remember, the idea is that they focus on the information and not on how pretty the graphic organizer is. We want to make sure that they can have the same type of graphic organizers that makes predictability, and these are great instructional routines that we put into place. So, section 6, take some time and jot down your thoughts. Now, if it was me, I would go back through each one of these and I would highlight the ones that I've done and then pick a few, just a few, to incorporate and have that conversation with the teacher that you work with so that you can share this information as well as open that line of communication. If you're usually sitting next to the student and you decide that you're going to be doing floating or providing stop-by-stop support, you need to make sure that the cooperating teacher understands why you're doing this. So remember, our goal really is to foster this independence. Now that you've finished reflecting on taking notes on each section, pause to think about how you can create more independence by providing these invisible supports. Make a plan to make these or to use these tools within your classroom. We planned a lot of different ways to support silently or invisibly, but what about if we need to support in the moment? Sometimes we have the best plans thrown out due to the unforeseen circumstances, a change in the schedule or an assembly. What about these monthly fire drills or tornado drills? You need to take time to discuss options with your collaborating teacher so that you are not left out, unsure of how to support in all situations. I've included this list in your handout on page 6 to remind you to make a plan ahead of time and to make time to discuss these with your cooperating teacher. This last activity is designed to increase your tools in both academics and behaviors. Read over the list and check the ones you've already have discussed with your special education teacher or your general education teacher. Put a big check next to those. Star the ones that you may need to add into your toolbox after you verify with your special education or general education teacher that they're appropriate for this situation. And remember to always be sharing these strategies with others. I included this cartoon because it was published in 1998. The need to foster independence has been around a while. due mostly to the best intentions of educators. Now, on this particular slide, we're going to take some time just to reflect on some maybe questions or common questions that paraeducators ask. What if my students need intrusive support due to physical disabilities? And so in the purple, or in the more magenta-ish pink purple, you'll find suggestions to each one of the questions that come up. This list is on page 8 of your handout. Take a few minutes to read over them. We mentioned that it's important to hear from our students, so let's hear for one more. Advice from Nikki. My freshman year, I felt like everyone in the class had a teacher, except for me. I had a helper. I wanted to be more independent, so my parents advocated for me. And things got better with my para. She helped me when I needed it, but it wasn't all the time. If I could give advice to paras, it would be that you should believe in your students. I just wish my teachers and paras would see me the way my parents see me, independent and strong. With that being said, our third password is believe in your students. Believe in your students. We're going to close out today's session with another quote. The way in which paraprofessionals thoughtfully fade adult support, build resilience, foster independence and interdependence, and prepare for inevitable disruptions are important for student success. Communication with your team is essential. Thank you for participating in today's session. There are multiple paths to applying for your certificate. Whichever path you choose, just remember, as I stated earlier, to double check your email address as you enter it, because even if it's the slightest typo, your certificate will not make it to you. You should receive your certificate within a few hours after you submit the form. And remember, if it doesn't come to you, you may need to resubmit. Now, here are ways you may apply for your certificate. You may pause the video and scan the QR code on the screen. You may use the training guide with the link found in step 3. And you also have the option of using the bit.ly link found on the page 9 of the participant packet. There's also a QR code there. And thank you for all you do to foster independence. I look forward to seeing you utilize these tools within your classroom, as the most important piece is that we take what we learned today and pay it forward.